Poke the Bear is brought to you by PrizePicks and the GameTime app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 264, presented by PrizePicks and GameTime tickets. My name is Conor Ryan, and once again, we are joined by 98.5 The Sports Hub's Ty Anderson. Ty, what's going on?
What's up, man? How we doing?
Doing well. We are in the thick of it in terms of preseason games, and I don't know about you, Ty. We're recording this right after the Bruins lost to the Rangers at Madison Square Garden. That was a preseason game. Wasn't a whole lot going on. Wasn't a whole lot I think we can really glean from. Again, you have David Pastrnak playing. You got McAvoy. You got Zadorov. Got a few guys in there. Not a whole lot to draw from that game. That was a lot of the veterans got their work in, got their skating in. That's about it. Wasn't a whole lot to really draw from that one, right?
No, not a lot to draw from that one. That was one of the more preseason games that I've ever preseasoned in my life, I must say. And so not too much to kind of take away from that game, to be honest with you. You got to look at some line combinations, some player combos. But beyond that, just kind of a big old nothing. And it kind of felt that way too. You know, after the game, Jim Montgomery was just kind of saying like, yeah, we didn't really pressure a lot, and it made life hard for ourselves. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of how it felt. And it was kind of hard to watch because I think once a game gets away from you in the preseason, you naturally get into like, all right, let's just get through this. Running clock, please. It was a running clock kind of game, in my opinion.
Yeah, run the clock, go in, go out, grab a slice of Sbarro pizza, hit the road.
Yes,
good
exactly.
day. Good day in New York City.
Take a picture with Elmo in Times Square.
Of course, get attacked by like a Goofy where like his face is half missing. Looks like Two-Face.
Yes,
a true New York experience, as they say. But when you look at if we're trying to draw any sort of takeaways or something from it, Brendan Bussey is, he gives up 4 goals. Rebound control was a little bit of an issue. Like some of it was bad luck, right? Like breakaway goal from Othman where Zadorov didn't look all that great there. 5-on-3 goal by Adam Fox earlier on in that game. But still a lot of rebounds, a lot of pucks in grade A ice. A lot of grade A chances generated by the Rangers in that game. What have you made of Bussey's preseason so far from what you saw both last Sunday and Thursday? And is there any cause for concern for what you've seen from him so far out of these 2 games?
Yeah, as a general rule of thumb, I try not to get too high or too low with the goalie in the preseason. If we go back famously in 2021, Linus Ullmark had a wretched preseason and then was great in the regular season from about November 10th or something on. He was incredible. So as a general rule of thumb, I try not to get too high or too low with preseason results. With that said, this was clearly an opportunity for Bussey to establish himself and to make life interesting, independent of what happens with Jeremy Swayman. Because listen, if they signed Swayman and Bussey was what you saw a year ago in the preseason and he was making these acrobatic saves and he's looking fantastic, it's like, okay, there's a legit reason to either waive Korpisalo or go with 3 goalies and let the battle rage on into the regular season, as we've talked about. But if you're going to begin the preseason with an 864, a couple of goals that I think are stoppable, a couple are just sick, right? Like that Kreider deflection is great. He's one of the best in the world at that. The 4th goal where the guy gets his own rebound, bats out of the air, like that's just ridiculous. But what I would say though is that like, okay, well, you got to stop that initial shot. You can't let that rebound get right back to him. So structurally, there's been some things that I think are the rebound's been pretty big, I would say. And just kind of that demeanor that your 6'5" goalie has to have of like, okay, the game is kind of getting away from them, but he's going to make the saves here, right? Like you kind of need more of that, I think, if he's going to make camp interesting. And through 2 games, we haven't really seen it, but again, it's how much weight you want to put in to a preseason performance. So that's where I get kind of stuck in the middle ground there. But I will say that to make things interesting, he's got to be better. He's got to be better than what he's shown through 2 games so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest key, right? And it's, as you said, we're at the stage of the preseason where, yes, we've got 3 games down now, but you look at like Corpusalo, who looked really solid in his reps, but had 7 shots on goal. Like, looked really solid with square to pucks, stealing off the post, doing all the things the basics you expect from a guy who's able to turn aside a lot of those shot opportunities. But 7 shots is 7 shots. So, like, listen, it's a lot better if he gave up 4 off of 7 shots, then we'd be freaking out, right? When you look at just what the state of this goalie core is. But it does, I think, reinforce whether it's Bussy, who's been off and on so far during the preseason, or Corpusalo, who looks good, but you need to see more of it, obviously, going forward. And I imagine he's probably going to get a full game here pretty soon. It does reinforce once again that you look at this team, you look at the roster, there's a lot to like about it. Man, you feel a whole lot better if you had you had number one in net, because it does feel like that is the one kind of just looming thing right now where defense, even with again a preseason game, few mistakes, few boo boos here and there, which you deal with, but D-core looks strong, a lot of options up front. If you have to open the year on October 8th with Corpusalo and Bussy, and it's not to say that I'm writing those guys off. I'm not saying that Corpusalo is going to be what he was last year. Bussy, what he's shown so far in the preseason, is going to carry over into the regular season. But at the most volatile position in hockey, like, that is a lot of uncertainty going into what should be a really, really strong roster. And it's kind of helping Swayman's leverage, at least right now. We could be talking in, the middle of October, and Corpusalo is 3-0, letting up 1 goal, and maybe all of a sudden that momentum shifts. But just something the Bruins, you don't want to be in right now. You want to be getting ready and locked in with your whole crew, and that's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, they are a 96% finished product in terms of like their opening night roster, but the 4% that's missing is actually worth more than 4%. Like, they built the system around having a great goaltender. As we've talked about before, like, you bring in the best two-way center available on the open market. You bring in the best defenseman available on the open market. And that confirms that you're dug in on the team construct and the team identity and how the team is going to look. You can't go back now. It's kind of, this is what it is, right? And I thought it was interesting. Yesterday, after the morning skate, Jim Montgomery was asked about Michkov, the kid in Philly, and he's talking about how, like, that's how you get generational players, is having top picks. And he referenced Colorado, and he said, "Look, they got McKinnon first overall, they got the best defenseman in the world 4th overall." It's like, that's how you build teams like that. And this is sort of what we've talked about on this podcast, where, like, you can't just build that kind of team on the fly. You have to amass the picks, and you have to suck for a while, and then you have to build that kind of team. They have built a team that, as long as that goalie is unsigned, it is incredibly incomplete. And Corpusalo, again, I've said this before, I believe, on here, but, like, I don't doubt they can fix him. Not a guy you want to rely on, though, for as your workhorse. You know what I mean? So, like, he could be great as a supporting cast member piece, right? And it's kind of like Halak, right? Like, when you brought Halak into Boston, he kind of flamed out as a starter in New York with the Islanders. And then you said, well, we're going to bring him in. He's going to play 30 games. We're going to get 25 great games out of him. We might get 5 clunkers, but we're going to get 25 really good above replacement level appearances. But if you had to rely on Halak to make 50 appearances, that number's going to go down a little bit. You're going to get more stinkers. Look at the playoffs when they had to rely on him in the bubble. Like, you kind of saw, like, oh, this is good. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh my God, this got to get this over with. Get this out of here. So, like, but until Swayman is signed, the picture is incomplete in an above average sense in terms of what you're missing from your roster.
Yep. Swayman watch continues on. There's nothing more really to note of it. So we will thankfully pivot, Ty. We won't keep on talking about Jeremy Swayman because there's nothing really new to talk about there. Before we talk about a few other top subjects with the Bruins and camp, preseason, all that stuff, let's take a quick break. Hear from our good friends over at PrizePicks.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you one win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, your picks are still live. Big questions going into the football season. Will Patrick Mahomes throw for more or less than 267.5 yards one week? Will Jalen Hurts throw for 240.5 passing yards another? Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Now, back to the show.
Shout out once again to our good friends over at PrizePicks. All right, Ty, looking at the rest of what we've seen so far, especially maybe that game on Tuesday against the Capitals where they had a couple of NHLers. You had this game on Thursday against the Rangers where a lot of their lineup regulars were in there. Whether it's that, camp, practices, all that stuff, who are some guys that have really kind of stood out to you so far from what you've seen? Again, not too much ice time, but is there any guys that are either separating themselves or making a legitimate push maybe that we didn't really expect?
Yeah, I think a guy that's kind of unheralded and right now I would have a hard time sending him away would be Cole Koepke. A player who I think just plays with pace, plays the right way. You look at that goal that he scored in the opener. He provides great support, ensures a battle win for the Bruins along the wall, then drives right to the net. I mean, that's kind of how the goals are scored now, right? You got your highlight reel one-timers, but a lot of the game now is that kind of messiness, in front of the net, around the net. And so for him to do that, I think I think it's nice. And he had a point last night as well. So he had 2 points in 2 games. So Koepke's a guy that, I think it may be under the radar in terms of his ability to compete for a spot, but a good fourth line kind of weapon that you could have for the Bruins right now, especially with Max Jones being a little uncertain right now. Can you imagine and stuff? I'm just going to go play out and play hockey and stuff. No, but I think that's it's a spot right now where I look at it and I say, yeah, you're a legit contender. So that'd be one for me.
Yeah, I think you look at like the entire fourth line grouping. You've got so many intriguing options where you could make a legitimate case for a couple of these guys. Like I think going into the year, I'm like, all right, it's probably going to be some combination of, Beecher, Mark Kastelik, who I think has been really good. He was impactful this last game, was doing everything to get noticed. You got Max Jones, who's obviously banged up right now, but you imagine he's probably one of the favorites, at least going into camp. But yeah, as you said, you got Koepke, you got Riley Tufte, who's 6'6", you got Riley Duran, who is a guy that I've been talked about quite a bit, and then even a guy who I don't think is going to make the team on October 8th, but like Trevor Quintar is the guy who's causing chaos every time he's out there. And I think I mentioned this on another podcast, but the one thing I like about Quintar is that like it's going to his second full year of pro hockey. He's 23. It seems like he already is well aware of like, I know what my identity needs to be. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hop over the boards. I'm going to hit someone. I'm going to talk a lot of shit. I'm going to hang around the net front. I'm going to do it every single time. And what do you know? Good things happen. So he's a guy that like, even if there are these players that don't make the team on opening night, Quintar, maybe a Koepke, maybe it's, Max Jones is banged up, Riley Duran, like there's a couple of guys who aren't going to make this team. But when the inevitable kind of injury bug sprouts up as the year goes on, they've got a lot of really intriguing options to really fill out that fourth line. Because, you got 4 or 5, 6 guys that if you told me they were going to play 60 plus games, I'd be like, I'm really curious to see what they do. Because I think they've got a lot of guys that kind of fit the mold of what checking line units need to be in today's NHL. And I think there's a lot more potential there. Not to say that, we're expecting a 15 goal season from Beecher or Max Jones or anything like that. But there's a lot of guys who I think they've brought in that I like how they play and I like what they can bring over the span of a long season.
Yeah, and I'm happy you brought up Kaslik because I think that if you're expecting him to constantly be a guy who is hitting and fighting every game, you're going to be disappointed because I know people in Ottawa wanted him to be more physical pretty much every game. Like it was there, but it wasn't consistent enough for them, right? So he has to bring value beyond that. If it's there every night, it's great. I'm not expecting it to be though. So what I'm saying is that you got to do something else. And through 2 games right now, he has won 60% of his faceoffs. He's 9 of 15. So that's another reason why they brought him in here. You look back to last year, they only had one righty faceoff guy who was above 50%. It was Charlie Coyle. So that is where Kaslik is going to come in and help provide some needed support. Just another face-off option behind Charlie Coyle on the right side to keep him fresh, to keep him from wearing down, breaking down as he gets a little bit older here. So that's what I love about him. Another guy who's had great numbers at the dot has been John Farinacci. Along the lines of what you're talking about, a player who very unlikely he makes the roster out of the gate, but you look at him a year ago, I think he had 38 points, I want to say, in the AHL, or 36 around there.
Yeah.
21st most among AHL rookies. Will probably get a greater role this year in Providence. And you sort of look at him like, if he makes his roster or if he fills in, it's going to be in a 4th line role. And if you could win faceoffs, and if you can turn the tide the other way, play some strong D zone, have good details, all of that, you're going to, carve out some more minutes for yourself. And so that's the guy that I think has been a standout. His time, similar to Kuntar, as you noted, like it's not now, but it's coming. And you can kind of see like there's something to build off of here versus which is always better than, a whole collection of, these guys look all right, I guess, so you got something here. Now, a lot of them I think are what we've talked about in the bottom 6 kind of mold, but, we'll see what happens there. Guys can develop on the fly and promote their way up a roster, as we've seen countless times now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I also think one guy that has probably exceeded my expectations in terms of maybe where I was comfortable starting him, I would probably say is Patra, who, again, like the numbers maybe aren't there like they were last year, which seemed like every game he was stacking up more and more, point totals, stuff like that. But I was going into this year, I think, fully expecting him to open the year in Providence, get top line minutes, top power play minutes, all that kind of stuff. And seeing kind of how he can build that confidence back up coming off of shoulder surgery. But I think he's looked really good so far. He's kind of been what he was last year, poised with the puck. Smart player. I think you've seen that he's put on weight and is stronger on the puck, which is an encouraging sign. Doesn't seem like he's tentative at all of coming off of that surgery. And again, we've got a ways to go before the preseason ends, but he just right now looks like an NHLer. Now, where does he fit in the lineup? That remains to be seen, but I feel like I'm kind of steering more away from he looks ready for October 8th as opposed to, and again, there's nothing wrong with him taking the slow and steady approach of Providence, but he feels like a guy that I think he can help this team right now and is kind of playing like it. Even he's not going to be with Zacha and Pasternak, and that line wasn't dynamic, but there were a couple of promising shifts, and a lot of it was him down low, winning board battles, making sound plays, and doing what he can to help his team. So I think he's been better than maybe what I expected going into this year, considering his offseason.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I'm with you that I thought he would begin the year in Providence. Right now, I have a hard time seeing that happen. And that's good for the Bruins in the sense that it turns the pressure up on a guy like Merkulov or Lysell, but I think his strength has been the biggest thing I've noticed. Like, he's stronger, he's smarter, he knows where to cut, when to cut, plays he can make. Like another guy too is winning faceoffs right now, which was not a certainty a year ago for him. And so, Yeah, I think I'm kind of changing my tune on that now, where I feel like I would be surprised if he didn't begin the year in the NHL. And we're not even at the halfway point. You know, we're almost there, but we're not quite. But right now, like, I have a hard time sending some of these guys down, which I think is exactly what you want if you're the Bruins. But like, you got 3 or 4 guys that are making legit pushes right now. Even Tyler Johnson, like, do I think he's been phenomenal? No, but I think he's a guy that can play left wing, center, right wing, is a veteran. Like, you know, like, he's made some plays that you're like, oh, I'd like to have that as an option. If I can, I'd love to have that in the chamber, you know, as a potential bullet. So they're getting a really good camp. Like, the results might not follow. Like, last night's game was boring as shit. Let's not sugarcoat it. But I think positionally and player wise, you're getting a really entertaining camp in terms of battles and who's going to go down and who's going to stay up. You got a couple of guys that are saying, I'm not going back down. And that's a great problem to have, I think, if you're the Bruins, while you try to sort through the messiness of the Swayman stalemate.
Yes, no, absolutely. And obviously, we're going to focus a little bit more on some of the other younger players who we expected were going to make a push for the roster in Fabian Lysell and Georgi Markulov. But before we kind of dive into that, Ty, take another quick break here from our friends over at GameTime Tickets. The summer is coming to an end, but rejoice, sports fans, because football season is back. And if you're a Patriots fan and want to make your way to Gillette Stadium, you got to go with GameTime Tickets. There's nothing better than posting up with your buddies at a tailgate, working the grill, knocking back a few beers, and taking in that crisp fall air over at Foxborough. With the new Patriots season upon us, now is your time to see Drake May in action, and GameTime Tickets will get you the best seats at the best prices to get you into the stadium. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace that makes getting NFL tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to kickoff. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets. There's no shortage of options when using the GameTime app. GameTime Tickets app makes it easy to sort through which specific game or other event you want to attend and shows you the best spots available to take in the action. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And with the Patriots home opener against the Seahawks just weeks away, GameTime Picks has you covered. GameTime Tickets also has you covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, including event cancellation protection, 24-hour returns guarantee, job loss assurance, and on-time ticket delivery. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying football tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Now, let's get back to the show. Once again, shout out to our good friends over at GameTime Tickets. All right, Ty. Looking at two guys that we were all talking about before camp started, Fabian Lysell, Georgi Markulov, prospects who have legit middle six, maybe top six potential further down the line, at least going into the year. Didn't show all that much, especially Lysell on Sunday against the Rangers. Both took steps in the right direction on Tuesday. Lysell gets the power play goal. Markulov sets up Justin Brazeau's goal at the net front. But you look at their performance, a step in the right direction, of course, but then who is it with Brad Marchand to, I think, throw a little bit of a reality check of like, you know, pretty good isn't going to be good enough if you want to beat out a Patra or let alone a Geeky or whoever else that Tyler Johnson, a veteran who's on a PTO who's desperate to keep his career going. Like, you just can't have one solid performance to validate your spot in the lineup, especially a team like this. Where are you at now in terms of either one of those guys, maybe Lysell, in terms of their odds of making the team? Is it gone down? Is it status quo? Like, where are you kind of at in terms of evaluating those players?
Yeah, I think personally, like, I think I might have Lysell above Markulov right now. And that might sound a little bit crazy because of the production. I think Markulov has 2 points and Lysell has 1. But right shot, right wing, plays with speed. can probably be sheltered a little bit more. Merkelov, like I think that. So I loved how he finished the game against the Capitals. That assist was great. I hated his power play work. I thought he made a couple of plays. He made one play that was really impressive, where he's getting challenged by a Washington PK guy who's trying to close in on him, and he makes this nice spinning backhand pass to Hampus Lindholm that leads to a shot on goal. Then he's trying what I would call AHL type moves, where he's trying to thread it through two guys at once. It gets intercepted, and now you have a shorthanded chance going the other way. It's not going to work at this level, right? Like your brain's got to move as fast as your body does. Now, with that said, there was also something that Lysell did that I was like, nope, that can't happen, where, he goes end to end and he gets a shot. The shot doesn't hit the net. It goes wide. It rims out, and now you got numbers going the other way. So both guys have things they got to work on. I think right now I would have Lysell above Merkelov, but not by much. And I was admittedly surprised that neither guy played last night. And I know they played the first two games, but one of those things where it's like, I would kind of give these guys every game that you can, because you got to know, you got to have some certainty. And a great example would be like you put Potter between Zacha and Pasternak. I liked it. I thought they were good. I actually did like that combo quite a bit. But could you put Merck there for a game and just see what that looks like, just so it's a potential option for you moving forward? Like that's something that I was a bit surprised we didn't see. Same thing with if the lineup has Morgan Geekie in it, I kind of want to see Lysell there with him too, because that could be a role for him. Right. Playing with Geekie on a third line role, perhaps. So a little surprised I didn't get in, because I got a feeling we're going to see them the rest of the way, if not 3 of the remaining 4 games. I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely have to at one point see Lysell with Kiki if you want to have him be kind of a guy that cuts his teeth on the third line and kind of builds a rapport that way. Also, if Marchand tries to get into a game, if you're able to get a game with like Marchand, Coyle, and Lysell just to see what it looks like if there's a person who is going to be very candid, very upfront with how you're playing on the ice, I'd love to see Lysell with a guy like Marchand, who preaches accountability, has pretty much like thrown cold water multiple times in terms of like, it's not going to just be like a young guy just because he's talented, because he's skilled. Like he mentioned that before camp even started about like, you can't dangle through 3 guys and be in a top 6 role. And then on Wednesday, again, kind of not pour cold water, but reaffirmed that like, just one game isn't enough. Like even look at Potter last year, like he had a really strong start and then he kept on stacking those games. Kept on stacking good practices. Like that's what you have to do to try to beat out a few of these guys that, like, you told me that they settle on like Geekie in like a top 6 role. Is that the flashiest option? No, but like he can hold his own there with those guys. Like Frederick, we've mentioned him before. I think they want to keep him down the middle, but like if you're trying to make that into like a shutdown heavier line and it's Marchand, Coyle, Frederick, they can kind of do that damage as well and be pretty effective in that role. Like they have options, the Bruins do, in terms of, yes, it's exciting and fun to think about like a guy like Lysell who's 21 on a dirt cheap contract, being a productive top 6 guy and letting the rest of the pieces fall into place. That's great. The Bruins would love if that happened, but it's not a given. And they have other options. They don't have to like, put a square peg in a round hole if Lysell's either not ready or not showing enough to step into that spot. But I would like to see a guy like Lysell, especially with legit and NHLers. And that's not to say that like, because I know people were complaining that Sunday game where he was he with Koepke and Farinacci? People were like, well, you got to put him with better players. I wouldn't use that as an excuse. Like I want to see Lysell with a Coyle and Marchand, but also it falls on the player to elevate as well, because Lysell was the worst player on that grouping in that Sunday game. Like Farinacci was great at the dot, and Cole Koepke scored a goal. Like they stepped up for what they are, and they're not probably knocking on the door at the same rate that a guy like Lysell is. So I think, it falls on the player himself, obviously, but I do want to see what a guy like Lysell can do with these guys. Cause I'm not saying this is like an excuse or like a worst case scenario, but it also feels like if this isn't the time where you're going to get an extended run, I feel like you run the risk of, if it's like, you give him 1 or 2 more games and you send him down to Providence, are you going to go back to that well again in November? Right. Like
Right.
that is, I think, one of the risks you have. And again, falls on the player to fight through that, but I'd rather you find out now what exactly you have. I'd rather him play 3 or all 4 of these next preseason games and see what you have before you make that decision.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is like why I may have Lysell over Merkelov right now was just the position, right wing. I mean, behind Pasternak, what do they have right now? It's kind of a whole lot of unknown. Like, yeah, you like Justin Brazeau, Morgan Geekie can play there, but if you want to put Trent Frederick in the middle, or if you want to put Matt Poitras in the middle, okay, well, that's one less right wing option you have, right? And so I think this team has a tremendous wealth of left shot wings, right? And that might work against a guy like Merkelov right now. Like,
right,
when your bottom 6 has Johnny Beecher and Max Jones, and you have Cole Koepke making things interesting. You have Trevor Kuntar as well, who I believe is a lefty. Sorry if I'm not 100% on that. But you have those guys down there. It's like, okay, well, that there's just more bodies now competing for opportunity. Whereas like right shot, right wing, that's been a need for God knows how long with this team now, it feels like. So you look at last year, like they had JVR and Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen all playing right wing. Those are all left shots doing that. So there's such a positional need for this, right? That's why I would put him above a guy like Merkelov right now, despite the results and despite Merkelov looking like a better player in practice. It's just like, what does the team need more than anything else? And I think that's kind of why it's such an interesting scale, and it's such an interesting battle to watch here as camp continues to unfold. It's why Tyler Johnson was brought in. I mean, he's a right shooting guy who can play the wing and had 17 goals a year ago, mainly on the power play. Yeah, but he's a right shot, right wing. They don't have a lot of those guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for right now, where do you stand on? Do you think what do you give the odds right now? As again, we are not even maybe at the halfway point. You got 4 preseason games to go. What are your odds of Lysell making the roster at this point?
I
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No. But like after all of this, I still feel like 40%. Like I'm not like, oh, it's a slam dunk. I just don't know because if the performance that he had on Tuesday, where he scores a goal or he draws a penalty and scores a goal, and by the end of the game, he's under their skin, the Capital skin, that is, like by playing with speed and playing with pace, I love his odds. But if he reverts back to what he was on Sunday, which has kind of been the MO, like you don't get consistent performances out of him, then that bumps down. So he needs another game. I think he needs a game where he has, 2 goals or he has a goal and an assist. Like he needs a multi-point night to bump that figure over 50%, because they could say to him, okay, well, you're still not a finished product, because that's what they stress. That's what they emphasize, whether we like it or not. That's what they stress. And they can say you're too up and down. Like you gotta find that level, man. Like you gotta be consistent. So until that's proven otherwise, like that keeps him below 50%, in my opinion. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going at 35 right now, and I think that can swing quite a bit based on how he does in this next game. Because again, as you said, there is an MO, there is a reputation in terms of the off and on production. He's 21, like he still has room for growth, but I think what that growth has to be at this camp with what's at stake and the minutes available, his growth needs to be stepping in and building off of that performance. We haven't really seen that yet from him. It's something that is tough to do. Like that's why it was so shocking when Poitras, who everyone thought was going to be playing the OHL, had a good game where, let off all of our headlines probably that first game where he scored the goal. Like, oh, Poitras, he looks pretty good. Oh, he's scoring 2 more the next game. Oh, wow, he looked holy. You need that progression from a guy that you saw last year in Poitras, and Lysell has all the talent to do it. Like again, you even saw like after he scored that power play goal, like I feel like he's a guy that's very reliant on the confidence part of his game, and you saw how much I think freed up he was after it. So it's one thing to score a goal and then feel good about your game and have it rolling the rest of the way and be active, bring the puck down low, beat guys to lose pucks, like doing the things that, yes, he's not a heat-seeking missile on the forecheck at his frame, but can use that speed beyond just trying to dangle through guys. You saw that as Tuesday's game went along. But how do you carry that momentum, not just from the rest of the game? How do you carry it a few days down the road? Like that is what you have to do to be an impact player, at least somewhat consistently at the NHL ranks. So I have 35 right now, but if he scores another goal in the next game and he keeps on stacking these performances, that can change in a hurry because the Bruins have options. But again, I think the best case scenario is a guy like Lysell taking that spot, because there's a lot to like about the ceiling of that player if he proves over these next, week to 10 days that he has the metal and the ceiling to be a guy that maybe not this year, but down the road can give you 20, 25 goals, give you that speed that teams covet now, especially up front. Like, this isn't a guy that I think if you're the Bruins, as you said earlier on, you do your due diligence and give him 3 or 4 of these preseason games, because now's the time to find out what you have in the guy. You know what you have probably in Morgan Geekie, even if you maybe carve out an expectation for a little bit more of a scoring output. You kind of know what you have in Tyler Johnson. You don't know what you have in Fabian Lysell, and that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what kind of plays out. But let's find out, right? I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is like, I harken back to May when Don Sweeney is talking about we got to get faster. Okay, well, he's probably, then you let DeBrusk walk and you trade Jacob Lauko and you lose a lot of speed, and now you bring in Lysell. Like, that's a fast guy. And so I think you have to utilize that correctly. And you saw that he draws a penalty. It's a trip. It was kind of a crap penalty, to call in that moment, but he draws a penalty. This team's going to need to draw penalties a year ago after losing Lauko. So if he can address some of that speed, drawing penalties, and add the scoring, it's like, well, you got to have this guy on here,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll see how Lysell and a few of these other younger guys can kind of build their game moving forward. Again, 4 more preseason games to go. We're not quite at the finish line yet before the start of the regular season, but Ty, as we do gear up for October 8th in Florida, which I know you will be at, get ready for the sunshine, the Rainforest Cafe at the Sawgrass Mills Mall, all the fun stuff, and the game, I guess, too. That's kind of cool. As we ramp up for that day in South Florida, where can we read your stuff? Where can we hear you? All that good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me at 985thesportshub.com and on the radio, 985 The Sports Hub. You can also find me on their website and the podcast, Sports Hub Underground, with my friend Matt Zolliff. We do that every week. So yeah, that's where you can find me. You can find me on social media at _Ty Anderson. But if you're going to be a dick, don't remember that social media. Just leave me alone. Let me do my thing. So that's where you can find me. How about you?
Yeah, you can find all my stuff over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. We have covered every step of the way from the preseason through camp, through the regular season, through hopefully June, if this team can go on a run. So you can read all my stuff over there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93. Ty, thank you once again for hopping on. This is episode 264 of Poke the Bear. You fans have a great rest of your week.